We're back after a brief hiatus with a brand new Roll for Crit podcast, the official podcast for rollforcrit.com. Watch, shop, play. I'm Jonathan Estes.
And I'm Will Keeler. And a lot of news has rolled out in our brief hiatus.
Yes, quite a lot. Lots of really cool things. We can start with a little bonus news by saying congratulations to Ice Cool, the winner of the Kinderspiel DRS, for the little kid category. We won't know the rest of the winners for the other categories that we care about until I think next month. Is it July yet? No, it's still June. I think sometime in July we're probably going to find out. But I don't know. This game Ice Cool has penguins in it.
Yes. Luckily, we'll be able to play most of the series by then, of the possible winners by then.
Yeah.
A couple, unfortunately, we probably won't get until Gen Con itself, but at least from what I can see in terms of sales here. But it'll be interesting to at least be able to have some concept on some of the games.
Give you our take. Speaking of Gen Con.
Oh, yeah, I know. Trust me, I made sure to land that one in there.
Well, Gen Con is only a couple months away now, a little less than a couple months. And you can see behind us their cool gold dragon logo because it's their 50th anniversary, the 50th ever show.
Big old 50.
And they put out an announcement that's pretty exciting that for the first time ever in Gen Con history, they're close to selling out of tickets, and they have actually put a cap on the badges that are being sold, so that if you want to go to Gen Con, you actually need to worry about it for the first time ever. They said previously they have put caps on for the trade day badges, but never for the normal exhibitor or just people going to the show types of badges.
Well, this is definitely one of those situations when if you're a board gamer and once you see 50, it's like if I gotta go make one Gen Con, it's this one.
How much of it do you think is just the growth of the show continuing, or do you think a lot of it is really people are like, oh, the 50th one?
Oh, no, it's obviously a mixture. I mean, we've seen that in board games already. I mean, there's a reason why I think when we look at the news of how we're starting to see a lot more interesting developments in the board game marketplace in terms of companies, like when we bring up, like last time we talked about the Asmodee Alliance thing. There's a reason why we're hearing that more. It's because the hobby's getting bigger, which makes everything start to move and shift. But of course, like I said, it's the 5-0. I mean, it's going to be the one you want to go to.
I mean, there's a dragon made of gold there.
So I think overall, it is positive signs. We're seeing a bigger community. This may push more to, I believe, a while ago we talked about possibly Gen Con East or West Coast kind of deal. But it's going to be interesting to see, since this is big, how the PAX Unplug's going to do. Because that is also that's in the East Coast and might be maybe even a partnership with them, like that would be their East Coast showing or something. I don't know. Definitely glad to see more board gamers coming out.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to make them a lot of money.
Well, do you see how much gold's there?
The city is going to be even richer once again.
Which means they have a lot more pulling power with the city.
Right. Now, are you? I'm a little concerned about space. About how crowded it's going to be this year, because it usually is pretty crowded. But I mean, I think they are expanding more so even still into the stadium. But it'll be interesting to see how much we suffer walking.
Well, it's not just that. I think first of all, it's going to be interesting the first line because we get that early ticket, but that line's gotten like significantly longer each time we go.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not much of it doesn't feel like much of a perk.
Yeah, not anymore. But what's going to be interesting more is, in particular, I think, is the grouping of how are we going to just see Fantasy Flight flooded? Because like Asmodee, has a lot of the really big ones, or is there going to be some weird reverse thing going on? That's why I want to see, like, if this is the biggest crowd, will everything just grow equally? Will one company get swarmed? Will the reverse happen?
Yeah, no,
that's what I'm excited.
That's interesting. Yeah, where are people going to go? Maybe there'll be just more people at like the panels and the show kind of places, or the game library type places. Also, that they might be Giants concert to look forward to. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's a bunch of
everyone they might be Giants. They're like, I don't like board games. I'm just here for the band.
Could be. We will find out. As I said, August 17th is Gen Con 50. If you're going, let us know. We'll be there. We'll look out for you. And again, speaking of things that will be at Gen Con.
This is the sole reason why there's some people going to Gen Con.
This could be a big part of it. They officially announced, although they had already announced, but they kind of gave their first details for Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Pandemic Legacy, of course, one of the biggest games of the last
Currently, I believe it's number
5
one on
years.
Board Game Geeks.
Yeah, I believe it is. Number 1 ranked there. A huge popular hit. They're finally coming out with Season 2, and we finally got our first sort of details of it. Some interesting stuff. So this takes place 71 years, I believe is the number.
That 1 year is the most important year.
I don't know why. After the last game. And at least the initial twist, because who knows what's going to happen 2 or 3 games into this, is that rather than trying to remove disease cubes from cities, you're going to be placing supply cubes, which are, medicine and things like that. That you're going to be producing those cubes, and when a city card comes up from the infection deck, that city's infected, and you have to now put a supply cube to keep it at bay. And if you don't have enough, then it becomes infected. There is no longer a cure for this disease, any disease, at least at the start of the game. You are these sort of outlanders that are going into the mainland for the first time. You're going to be discovering the layout of the land. There's no planes in this one. There's only boats because technology is all gone. Like it's straight up post-apocalypse. Yeah. So
I mean, yeah, we sort of got that kind of guess from remember the leaked images from a while ago.
Right. But now we definitely can see they're going for seems like a very different look and feel. Still, basically Pandemic, still 1 to 4 players. Actually, I guess it's 2 to 4. I guess you could play it solo. I don't know. But the other thing though that's struck me as very interesting.
Anything cooperative, odds are you can play solo.
Right. Is that it is going to be standalone. As far as they've announced, there is nothing will carry over from Season 1.
No, I doubt that just because odds are maybe you lost your copy or something, or maybe you weren't able to get your hands on, or in our case, we haven't finished it yet. There might be something a little small, like if you've played Season 1, and then you can open this small pack. It's just like a one-time good bonus, which would be cool, I think, to have, but I do think that's a smart move for a legacy game in particular.
Yeah, no, I would love to see that, but yeah, it makes sense because you can't make people play through a 15, 20-hour game before they can buy your new one.
It's a challenging thing to do. I mean, we see it in video games too. That's why I think the best thing isn't as much a full-on heavy story, but maybe like a small, in this case, would be a small pack of cards. Like, you don't really need it. Like in other games, it might be like, you get this emblem if you've played our previous series or something like that. It's a small, like a cosmetic or something.
Also, I mean, how would you, because everyone's game sort of goes differently. So,
if you've opened Box J while playing Pandemic,
yeah, it'd be a whole thing. But anyway, this will definitely be probably the biggest game at Gen Con this year.
I'd be shocked if it's not.
I can't think other than maybe some, surprise announcements that we get. I don't know, but so that'll definitely be something to look forward to. It looks like we got a yellow box this time. The other one looked like
I think it's
black.
yellowish red, and dark blue.
Some of the colors like that, but they're not going with red and blue again, which is nice, I guess. Should have gone gold and silver.
The next one is actually Pokemon Pandemic Legacy. You have to stop the unknown outbreak or something.
Pokemon Legacy. All right. How about some other expansions? What do we think?
Well, continuing with companies owned by Asmodee. I mean, that's not a hard bet. Fantasy Flight's new Mansion of Madness expansion.
Yeah, Streets of Arkham.
Yeah. So this one focuses a lot on bringing sort of the city of Arkham out with more of streets and towns, as well as the Miskatonic Museum, which is really awesome. And I really think this is interesting because I think this allows for a lot more interesting, whether you make your own somehow or they make the more DLC packs, because you can more explore the town. Because if you recall, you and I have played the one from Innsmouth, where it sort of was like there's a street going around and just the one hotel room, that one sort of store. But now you can do more like stores on each side or something, I think, a lot more. This will give that kind of...
sort of open up the world to more exploration of...
That's not just literally a mansion, which I think you can do a lot more interesting, fun stuff. Plus, the museum tile, one of them has a dinosaur skeleton in it, so that's automatically a win. And of course, more new investigators, monsters... All the fun works.
It looks like the picture they showed is like a square box, which I
think it's probably the same as the other one.
The only ones I'm thinking of the miniatures packs, I guess, that were more rectangular.
No, the first one was Into the Threshold was square. It wasn't that big. It was maybe a little bigger than the Arkham card game box in terms of size.
Okay.
And sort of I mean, thicker because it has miniatures, but.
Okay.
But I think it looks cool. Anything, definitely bigger tiles, honestly, more than creatures are what excites me more because of just you can do more interesting stories then.
Yeah, no, it's cool to branch out like that. Although almost should they change the name to Mansions and Other Locales of Madness? I guess that sort of went out the window. I guess actually I never thought about it. Is that from, obviously it's like sort of a play on in the mouth of madness, but like why a mansion specifically? Because even in the base set, they weren't all mansions.
Well, I think in the original old first edition base was
they were
all in the house. Like even the first expansion was sort of like we added the backyard.
I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess you're right.
And I mean, why change the name?
It's catchy. Well, Mansions of Madness, Streets of Arkham will be coming out. I can't wait for the eventual Arkham horror expansion called Mansions of Madness or something. I don't know. That'll come together. Also, on I think it was our last episode, I guess, or maybe the one before that, we talked about our top 10 properties we thought should become board games. 2 episodes ago it was. Well, one that didn't make either of our lists.
But we did mention it a little both on and off air.
Was Avatar, The Last Airbender. And IDW has stepped in to take up the mantle there. They've announced The Legend of Korra. Actually, they announced they're going to be making multiple of these games. But the first one they said is...
Of the series, or you mean...
Based on Korra, specifically. This first one is Pro Bending, which if you are familiar with the show, that's the sport they play. It's sort of like their Quidditch, where they get into an arena and they use their bending powers to shoot. It's basically soccer, but with powers, right? Was that it? Let me read about it to you.
I wouldn't say soccer. It's more like like you know those gladiator games that we have, and like you push someone out of the ring, they're out. It's more like that, except I don't think they have to be balanced teams, but usually there's like one fire, one water, one earth, so there's resources for all of them on the field. It's their big sport. It's their football,
right.
Both American and soccer in terms of their popularity.
So the way that they're translating that is you're going to be drafting card decks, and then you're placing elemental tokens around the board in an effort to overwhelm your opponent. And your objective is to either advance the furthest forward as you can, or, as you said, knock the other person out of the ring. It sounds pretty. I think of all the things from Airbender, the reason it wasn't on my list in that segment was because I just couldn't come up with how it would translate to a board game. Mm-hmm. But this was the one thing that I thought, oh, maybe you could tackle that.
I mean, it's already a game, so yeah, obviously. Right. And I feel like unlike Quidditch, which you said, because the problem with Quidditch, I think, is the seeker.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I think that's
how do you translate that?
Yeah.
And even besides that, there's a lot of like magic stuff that's hard to really make.
But this I can see as like you move a character here, and it has a strike that goes 1, 2, 3.
It's almost more like a Chinese checkers or something, you know? Right?
Well, I was actually thinking more along the lines of a lot of like Summoner Wars kind of, or like what was that game I'm blanking from? Arcane Wonders. It's part of the. It comes in the long.
Onitama.
Yeah, like where you have sort of the. Interesting, and I could see that sort of going around with the different benders. Like, I would say like the Earth Bender probably is a little hard because he has to be at an Earth tablet to bend, but he's harder to push. The Firebender can bend anywhere, but he's weaker or something like that you could do. And then what could be cool is if you actually draft people from the show that maybe have different abilities. Like I was thinking, when I first saw this, I was thinking about a couple. Like one could. Because he could do some things. I just realized I probably shouldn't say if you haven't watched it yet. But like, it's sort of an important thing. But like, it was not one of the 3 characters. It's one of their rivals, and you find out why he's doing so well. Because he has a little secret advantage, and that could play into the game somehow. And it could have some fun stuff. So I do think, at least right now, this one, in terms of the rest of the universe, both Korra and Avatar, it's definitely one that, once again, it's going to be interesting to...
Yeah, what do you think the others... Because they just said Korra. I wonder what else they might do.
To me, the most obvious one was an RPG. Because being able to build a bender would be the coolest thing in the world and exploring the world. But outside of that, I definitely think if they should really take advantage of something that's a lighter. They shouldn't all be medium. They should be different difficulties and times. Like maybe one that's just a little fun thing, like... I'm trying to think of something silly. Like the first thing that comes to mind is when Angla's playing with the flute and the little gophers are popping up, and I don't know, something.
I was thinking like in Korra, like just the training regimens with like the things that, like the
The
sticks that
spinning.
move and spin, like something
Yeah.
like a dexterity game. It sounds like they're going to be focusing on little, sort of the cryptozoic Rick and Morty approach.
Well, I don't think that's a bad idea as long as you also take advantage of, don't make them all like the same thing. Like one should be a lighter one that makes fun, like or dexterity game. One can be more of an actual like the heavy war game or something.
Yeah, well, it should be interesting. We're fans, so it's cool to see that universe being adapted to board games, and hopefully it is successful and takes off, and they find more cool things to do about it. Now this last one took me by surprise.
Yeah, this one I actually have not heard about until today.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So if you've watched the show, you know both of us are big fans of the Legendary card game series, and they just announced a digital version of Legendary called Legendary DXP, which I think stands for Digital Experience or something like that. It's sort of like
I think it stands for
piece-
Daring Extreme without the E.
It's like how Versus is 2PCG. Like, why do they like these weird abbreviations? But which is Legendary is a deck building game, but of course, famously with Marvel characters, and then later Alien and other properties.
And soon to be Buffy.
That's right.
I don't know why I crossed my fingers. I actually know that.
You were lying. I don't know. This, however, is an original fantasy IP, not using any of their licenses. It takes place in a world they called Alamith. And it's going to have, other than that though, it's going to be the same kind of gameplay. They're going to have solo, online versus modes, as well as weekly actual tournaments that you can kind of participate in. I said mobile, or maybe I just said digital. I know it's on Steam. I think mobile as well. Yeah, I'm positive mobile as well. But I don't know. What do you think about that? That it's not Marvel. It's a new IP.
Well, I think the reason for not having Marvel is legal reasons. That's my big guess. But I think where they can how much is this, by the way?
No announcement yet about price or anything like that.
Because I think the smart thing for them to do this for is to actually use, for example, they use a whole new IP. They just put it out there, see what people feel, and if it has enough following for that certain one, they'd be like, okay, let's make a printed version. Like it can be a good way to be, in essence, a beta testing ground.
That's interesting.
That they can actually automatically get the data if they see like, okay, look, we notice literally everyone always buys the card that does draw 3 cards. That's way too powerful now. Or that's too weak. How can we buff it? So this could actually help translate into the printed version, which is a little harder, to update or.
Well, there's certainly a lot of things like because having pretty much every expansion for Legendary, we know having to look through all those rule books and remembering different keywords that a digital version would simplify a lot, as well as the setup. One of the things a lot of people complain about with Legendary is the shuffling of the decks and all that beforehand. So that's definitely good. I think you're right with maybe it may be partially legal reasons, but also I think they just want something. They have a system, and they're like, let's make a game where we don't have to pay anyone else.
No,
you know what I mean?
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I wouldn't mind seeing this then come to the print and be like, okay, let's take this character who I don't know whose name.
That's Splorgameth.
Splorgameth, classic Splorgameth. With Iron Man, and then also with Buffy, and then with whatever properties you have.
It's definitely interesting. The art looks cool. I mean, it seems like a cool world, if not a somewhat generic one. It's nothing like really interesting. But because it's Legendary, you talk about pricing. I wonder if they'll do maybe the Star Realms route, where I'm pretty sure Star Realms is free, but you can pay to get more decks and things like that, or if it'll be a flat fee with in-game transactions. That would be interesting to see. But it will be cool to be able to do. Like, my dream would be to have, what's the word for it? Where you can play online, but
an empty wallet.
but not at the same time. So like,
I know what you mean.
I could make a move and then check back later.
No, I definitely no. I mean, it's definitely something we both like in terms of, especially since, with our friends, we're not always on at the same time and doing. I mean, God, that's always a nightmare just trying to coordinate things.
And because we always want to play Legendary and everyone else doesn't always want to play Legendary.
The actual trick with this too is if they keep their. Speaking of paying less, their online one is just this. So let's say it's just this base, and maybe they add some other stuff in there of just the core, and then everyone's like, I really like this game. And they're like, wait, there's a Marvel version?
Right.
Then you can really get that sort of people to buy the physical one after.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of a mixed blessing, kind of, because the original IP, they don't have to pay licensing fees, but also if it was called Marvel, that's obviously way more downloads you're going to get, or at least initially. So it'll be interesting to see how this actually does in the marketplace. Coming out sometime later this year, but that's definitely a weird one that I didn't expect them to announce that, but cool. Good for them. Couple of Kickstarter picks exclusively from you. And this first one, it's called, I believe it is said, Oaxaca.
Yes, in this game, this actually comes from the country in Central America, where it has a lot of like, I guess, like it's almost like, I'm blanking on the word craft market. Wow, I totally just blanked on the word craft.
Okay, crafts.
And the idea is you're making a stall and making crafts to attract the most people. And what's cool about it is you can craft either like cloth, tin items, wood painting, clay. But the way that works is there's a deck for each type. And you can either build something you have ready, like the plans you have for, or draw cards from each deck. And each deck, like cloth cards, will have more to do maybe with victory points, when another one has more to do with getting you more resources. So it's this really fun management of sort of like, what can I do to give me the most points, and should I go all in on clay, or should I try to mix it up a little bit?
Is it sort of like you get a card that tells you like what parts you need to build?
No,
something?
like when I pull a card from the clay deck, I put it out in front of me, and it says it needs 6 resource cubes put on it. And one of the actions can be to put resource cubes of one type. So let's say I had 3 clay items and a cloth and a tin. I can either put 1 on the cloth, 1 on tin, or 1 on each of the clay. So you like choose one type.
Okay. Huh.
And this is all decided by like dice rolls, because you roll some dice with all the symbols on them. So it's a fun little mechanic of like choosing how, depending on dice rolls, where you're gonna try to exceed in which element and have a cool table with all these nifty little things.
That's pretty fun. I mean, that's a fun thing. I like the art. It's very colorful.
Yeah, and that's another reason too. It really has that fun sort of just colored and sort of just to be fun to just sit around and play together.
I'm sure there's a better word for what that art style is, but it's sort of like that Day of the Dead kind of thing, where it's like those.
I mean, you would hope. I would hope it was. Like,
no, I'm sure there's.
And all the artwork is based on Japanese anime.
Of course, I'm an art history major, and I don't know, but yeah, there's those cool, like colorful, crazy art kind of things you see from those places. So that's Oaxaca, and that one goes for $30, and I think it had not much time left, so you want to check on that if it sounded good to you. And then this next one, Rival Realms, but also sometimes referred to on the page as Fantastica Rival Realms, because it's actually a prequel to another game.
Yeah, it's a little weird like that. That I'm a little still confused. But the game itself, looking at it itself, it's this fun 2-player game. You're both, I guess, magicians who were doing a challenging card game against each other, and somehow magic happened. And now you're stuck in a realm. So you're pretty much exploring these really beautiful pieces of artwork that have different things on them, and you have to actually try to complete this entire area and explore this area to get points, and whoever gets the most quests done wins. It's a very simple, fun little move around 2-player. And the way you do that is you all have those land cards in hand, and you can either play them or discard them to move. But you discard them to your opponent's pile. So it has that fun mechanic of giving power to your opponent in order to take a move, which is always a fun.
Risk versus reward of, do I want to make a good move to steal from the opponent? And this is from designer Alf Siegert, who also did that 2-player game that I talked about a while back, the what's it called, Heir to the Pharaoh, the dogs versus cats game, which had a very similar kind of mechanic with that. So good track record, and he's made a ton of games under Eagle Griffin. So that sounds cool. Rival Realms. That one goes for only $15 too.
Right, and the previous game is there on later plays levels.
Add-on?
Yeah, it's from what I didn't read too much of that, but it said a deck building game.
Oh, okay.
Interesting, but I definitely, one of the reasons also to look at this is the art's amazing. Yeah. So definitely for $15, definitely something to look.
Pretty good price. I can give you also, we didn't mention that Korra game is going to be a Kickstarter game.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. And they also announced a Planet of the Apes miniatures game that's going to be on Kickstarter.
IDW?
No. Oh. It's totally, I forget who's making it, but it's a miniatures game. It's like humans versus apes battle game. So that's interesting. But that's another one that almost made my list, but I wouldn't have wanted a miniatures game. But we'll still see how it is.
Well, now, is that because you don't think it translates well, or just because you're not a miniatures game player?
More of that. Like, I would want more of a thematic game than a battle game, which is what this sounds like. But those are future Kickstarter picks, perhaps, to look forward to.
Now, we did get to play some games. In particular,
big ones.
Going back to the beginning, how we said we played some of the nominees.
Yeah, the Kennerspiel DRS had one nominee that you may have heard of called Terraforming Mars, and we finally got a chance to play it. We played with 4 players. I think it goes up to 5, maybe even, yeah, 5. It was definitely an interesting experience because this is basically the idea of the game is well, it's right there in the title. You're terraforming Mars, but
you're all rival companies.
Right, and you're trying to get do the most to Mars. You're trying to get the most points. I mean, really, that's what it is. And you're doing that by either claiming parts of Mars to be cities or forests, perhaps, or even lakes or oceans. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Playing other cards like that, maybe you add more animals or nature preserve, things like that.
You're also going to be raising the oxygen level and the temperature on Mars, so it will be livable. And you're keeping track of all this on the board as you play. You're taking turns. A lot of your turn is going to be playing cards and spending resources to do so. You have a board that keeps track of all those resources.
But what's also interesting is each turn you get new cards, but you can't keep them all. You have to pay for them. So it becomes this fun balance of do I really need this card, or do I want that extra money?
Right. So there's basically 2 payment steps because not only do you have to pay to play the card, you also, as you said, you have to pay to even keep it in your hand. So there's definitely a lot of decision making of what do I want to use these resources for, because there are definitely many different ways you can do it, and depending on your faction or whatever you want to call it, maybe even more weird ways.
Because each company you get you can play with just basically where everyone's vanilla. Or, which we jumped straight in because we're like, no, we're going straight in. You can get unique abilities which sort of lean you to where you're going to go. Like, Jonathan was all about heat.
Yeah, heat I could use as a money resource. So for me, heat was money, which was really, really useful, at least early on.
And I was all about planting forests, which is also funny because I didn't know forests give you points at the time. So I was just like, I guess I'll just keep planting.
You were just like Captain Planet. You made everything a tree.
You're a tree. You're a tree.
And I think one of the most interesting aspects of the game is those resources in that there aren't separate tokens for each one. You have one common type of resource, and the way you figure out which resource the cubes represent is where they are on your board. So you really have to be careful about not moving your stuff around, because if you do, you're going to forget, oh, was this money or was this water? I already forget what the resources are. So that's pretty interesting. Really the main place you're getting your points and your gameplay, I feel, are those cards. Most of what you're doing is playing cards, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe because you were spending a lot more time with Mars, so maybe it depends on.
I did get a couple of points from cards, but it does feel that a lot comes from the board as well, and things. And actually, a lot comes from the mid game. I think raising the temperature and the oxygen really did help a lot.
Yeah, because all those things give you points. This is one of those games
you get more money, which the more points you have. So
right, like pretty much everything you do kind of gives you points. So you get there's a lot of those little like dopamine, like do this and get a point, get a treat, get a snack, which is good. I don't know. So what did you think of the game?
I mean, I had a lot of fun, especially when I had the really dumb realization of how. Because I thought, everyone was like, Will, you're ahead. I'm like, no, I'm not. And you're like, you're going to get 20 points. How? Trees. They don't get points. Yes, they do. Oh. But, like, ignoring that, I still had a lot of fun because I had 2 reasonable, cool, 2 card combos. Like, the cards aren't just points, done. I had one that was like, anytime someone plays a city, put a thing here because I gave them pets. And then I had one that was like, anytime you play a forest, put an animal token here. One was... remove an animal token from a card to put one here because I made predators. And then I had 2 bacterias. So the cards have a lot of synergy in them, which makes them a lot of fun too.
I think this is one of those games where I feel like almost every card or many of them you read and you're like, wow, that seems overpowered almost. Like, but in a good, because they all feel like that. There's no card. A lot of the cards you really feel good about playing.
I would not say that as much because there's a certain, because some of the cards obviously, which I still think makes them not too overpowered, are like, this is worthless once you pass this oxygen point.
That's true.
Or
it could be situational.
There are some that, and that makes it a lot more interesting. Some are you can't play until either as below or above an oxygen point. So you might be like, do I hold on to this because it's good? But we're not anywhere near that point, so it's just going to be dead in my hand.
No, that's true. Yeah, there is some risk of like, yeah, should I buy this card because maybe it will come in handy? But if it doesn't, like that happened to me, where at the end of the game I had a couple that were just worthless, and I was like, I've been waiting to play these, and it didn't matter.
And we didn't play with. There were a set of advanced cards. I think that's because they said take it out because it's more about not strategy. Like politics, it sounded like, or something like that.
I'm not sure.
But we were like, but it also set the game longer. We're like, okay, our game's gonna be long enough as it is.
Yeah, we went with the non-advanced cards, which added a lot more cards because we did go through.
No, I think it's like
that whole deck.
2 separate decks, like it doubles the size if you add.
But yeah, I did really enjoy the game. It's definitely. It is more on the Euro-ish side.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
When you get down to it, you're placing cubes for points.
I do like. Even though there's a lot to do with the cards, I still in my head, if the first thing that came to mind was worker placement, sort of.
A little bit like
Not
that.
Not actual worker placement, but like territory control kind of.
There is some, like with the awards you can get, that's sort of a worker placement aspect.
Right.
But it also did have a really cool feeling of, I really kind of felt the sensation of, oh, the planet is getting warmer. That representation of that board I thought was so cool to actually kind of witness the planet changing and evolving. It was really neat.
I mean, I like, even though you get points, and sure, you can steal a space from someone, it didn't really feel as much as like, I could be like, all right, Jonathan, I'm going to attack you and put you back 5 turns.
Yeah, it's not super... I don't want to say competitive.
Aggressive, I think.
Aggressive,
is
yeah.
the
It's
word.
not super aggressive.
You can be aggressive in the sense of like, there are a couple cards that let you steal like 1 or 2 plant or something, or so on and so forth, or you can take a space that you know someone's trying to get. But in the end, you come up with this cool, like we had, it was a green belt mostly around the equator.
Yeah, you actually get to see like, oh, this is what Mars might look like. That's kind of neat. And I mean, if you read the rule book, they have all these little scientific tidbits. The guy who designed it like has a PhD and all this stuff. I think this would be really cool in a classroom setting as an educational experience.
Well, now here's my next question. Do you feel that this is a reasonable nominee for?
I definitely do.
I mean, you haven't played the other one, so I'm not saying.
Right, it's hard for me.
Like, if we recall last year when we talked about the Spiel des Jahres, we were like,
right.
But I feel like this definitely feels.
Remember,
like,
this is Kenner Spiel.
Right, but even as a Kenner Spiel, you can say like, I don't want to play this again or something. This is a game I want to. Go again.
It's definitely one that I did pretty badly by the end of the game. I really felt like, oh, I wish
honestly, I was amazed because mid-game, I thought you were going to win because you had...
I seemed like I was doing so well with that heat to money bonus, but I think my problem was I really didn't take advantage of that board as much. I wasn't placing as many tiles down. That was part of my problem, and then just some bad card choices.
It's definitely one of those games I feel, and that's why I want to play again. I feel like now we've played it once to be like, okay, so I know the strategy. I got to get those lakes in or take those spots.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different strategies that you want to be able to get down. And one thing I really want to try but didn't is the solo mode that a lot of people rave about. And I think playing it, you can kind of get that sense that this really would make a great solo
game. Well, yeah,
game.
not only that, because just for me, I don't know if this is a big thing for a lot of people, but it'd be more like, at the end of the solo mode, like, look at the place I made.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about like, oh, what's that guy doing? I'd rather I'd almost rather play
like
solo.
Just play SimCity.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a fun little Civ sort of building game. So Terraforming Mars, we don't have to tell you about it. I also do want to mention that they have already announced, I believe, 6 expansions for this game.
Well,
that's a lot.
I mean, that is a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it could be like, you know how the DC has the crossover packs?
Right.
A little small, like.
Well, I know one of them is going to be Venus. There's going to be a separate Venus board or track.
Okay. Well, I was about to be like, is that an expansion or a spin-off? Those are 2 different things.
Yeah, it's an expansion. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I mean, that's
interesting.
That's interesting because that gives a lot more placement opportunities. And on an interesting note, some people believe it's actually going to be easier to colonize Venus than Mars.
Huh? we'll find out in the future. It's Terraforming Mars. You've probably already heard of it, but we give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
But let's scale down. We have enough problems on our own planet to worry about before we try to go to Mars. Or maybe that's why we should go to Mars. I don't know.
I don't want to live in this planet anymore.
We also played This War of Mine from Awakened Realms, which is based on the video game, which we've also both played. And it's one I got from Kickstarter, got a ton of hype behind it. It's basically, it takes place during a war, a fictional war, so not based on any real thing in particular. It's a cooperative experience where you're trying to survive in a house, get resources, food, medicine, people, build new things for your home.
Keep everyone's motivation, hunger, make sure no one loses themselves.
Right, they're not ill or wounded. And it's a little hard to explain exactly the gameplay, because one of the very unique things about the game is there is not really a rule book. There is a journal, which for your first time playing walks you through the setup. And then there's a book of scripts, which is sort of your Tales of Arabian Nights, Seafall.
Yeah.
Book.
Pretty much, if I had to describe it, it's a worker. The beginning is a worker placement in which you have, depending on how happy, hungry, whatever the case may be, they have a certain number. Each survivor has a certain number of actions. It's not the way it worked is we played with just two of us, and it wasn't really. The book's pretty much just going back and forth. The way it worked, we just sort of collaborated. It's not like you are Survivor A and I'm Survivor B. We have 3 starting survivors. You can go up to 4, I believe, and pretty much they each have a certain number of actions, so which can be to build, remove debris. I mean, just like in the game, it's just placing the worker.
One game I would think that is probably the closest comparison I can think of is Robinson Crusoe.
Yes, that kind of.
Only instead of an island, you're in a house.
Right. The only difference is the second half, which if you remember the game is when you can go out at night to explore and get resources. That is more like the Arabian Nights. What happens is you go out, you choose 1 of 3 locations, and depending on the location, you flip cards over, which might tell you to look in the book for something. And they can be sometimes special, really special, unique events. Sometimes just do a trade deal.
And the whole game is basically extremely thematic. And a lot of what they write about in the books and the things that they've talked about online that I've read is it's really meant to be about putting you in this space and kind of experiencing these horrors of war, and much more about a storytelling kind of experience and less about getting points and whether you win or lose the game and things like that.
Because you will lose.
Yes, it's definitely rough.
We mentioned a little bit with Terraforming Mars. They're like, oh, I want to play it again because now I know. This is the game where like, okay, you're gonna lose the first one because you didn't know that when you see that you should just stop.
Right, and which though like is basically the point. It's kind of the point is if you were in there in real life, you wouldn't know. Maybe you're desperate, you need food. Maybe that soldier will give it to you. Maybe he won't.
Right. The example that we have is there's sort of checkpoint quests that go after a certain number of turns you have to do, and we had one which was have a weapon, a gun of some sort to give up. Our very first round, we found a broken gun, which, if we were smart, we would have stopped right there. But we pushed our luck and lost it all.
Yeah, it was pretty sad.
And we weren't able to get a gun for the rest
of it. It's a lot of those hard choices of, if we get the right thing, we'll be good, but if not, we lose everything. And should we feed this guy or cure this guy's wounds? We can't do both.
But definitely as a solo experience, especially I would say maybe with not that many people, 3 at most maybe.
To play the game. Yeah, well, we played it with 2, as you said. It definitely is. I don't know.
Because I don't really feel like there's like turns. It's not like, okay, Jonathan, it's your turn. I definitely feel if you want to buy a game that's just for you playing, this is probably one of the best games you can buy.
It's a bit of a strange thing because I agree with that. Like I almost feel like this game really is a solo game that if someone else is playing, they're kind of just like giving you their opinion.
Well, that's why I was like, 2. I think what we did was pretty fine because it was just sort of a back and forth sort of.
Yeah, 3 or more. I think you really got to know your group and know that they're going to be okay with like kind of sharing the board.
Right. Like what it reminded me more of is not a board game as much as how like, we enjoy playing horror games together, video games together, and what we usually do is one person holds the controller and plays when the other one's...
It really is like if you were playing the video game This War of Mine and someone else is over your shoulder giving you advice.
Right, and I think that's fine for a game. In fact, I think it's a fantastic addition to most people's collections because of that.
Yeah, but certainly if you are looking for a real interactive multiplayer experience, this isn't where you're going to find it.
But it comes with, we weren't even using all the modules. It comes with amazing stuff. Of course,
Oh.
orphans, because if it wasn't hard enough for you, let's give you a kid.
I mean, no, we didn't even scratch the surface of my copy came with stretch goals and an expansion and different scenarios. There's a lot we haven't seen in there.
No, but overall, like, just the time we played, we haven't finished our thing. We're still alive.
We saved our game about like halfway through.
And that's the other great thing. There's a save in there, too.
Which is really cool.
Is really important for a solo game to me because I really love playing, for example, the Arkham and Eldritch horror game series solo. But the reason I can do that is because I have room in the house that I know no one touches, so it just sort of sits there for saved.
Right.
So that's why I think as a solo game, it really is one of the best ones out there. I mean, it does capture the mood. We were desperate a lot of times. Like, first round, we're board gamers and play video games. We can handle this. Second round, okay, we need, oh God, we don't have enough food. Jonathan, what do you think we should do? I don't know. If we go and push resources, that's why I thought 2 was great, because I think it gave you that just enough that as you expect a group to worry a bit. And it didn't, and because it's solo and cooperative, it didn't feel like Dead of Winter when I'm like, you're gonna backstab me, aren't you?
Right. And the other thing that's really cool and weird about this game, I'm curious how you thought it went, is what I said before, that rule book thing. How there is no real rule book. You just kind of start playing and you get into it, which is great initially, I think, because you don't have to read any rules. Everyone can just sit down, take the game out, and you're ready to go as soon as you set it up. You're playing, which is really cool. The way they kind of make that work is as you progress, they slowly introduce extra rules here and there, a little more complicated things. And some of those even are almost optional, that if you didn't look at that section of the book, that rule maybe doesn't even exist for you. The thing that was the downside to that, I think, is if there was a specific thing we weren't sure about.
Was there a couple?
It was tough there wasn't like an index or really somewhere always to find out exactly what we wanted. Right,
and I understand that agreement, and I sort of wish there was, especially when you have modules, because God knows the modules will be like, then how does it interact with this situation? I mean, even with other games, we have to look up crazy stuff like that. But because this game is more about the feeling and the experience, I was fine with it almost. Like, as long as you're getting that dread of, oh God, we need a gun and we need it fast.
Yeah, well, I hope that other companies try this sort of thing, because I would like to live in this perfect world where there are no more rule books and you can just open every game and start playing it. But there's definitely some kinks they got to work out, I think, of that system.
Well, I do think I've seen some companies do, which I think is just make their own actual tutorial video. Which is that way you can be like, all right, everyone, 10 minutes, click.
Or even if there was just also in addition, which maybe they have online or they will, a traditional rule book, just like a reference guide, like the Fantasy Flight games often have. That would be nice.
What I would like to see more is games like this that are really just such obvious, you could play with 2, but are just made to go solo so well. I don't think there's that many, comparatively speaking.
No, there definitely aren't, and I think it could be. I love it, but I think it's a tough sell, because especially for this game, which is a pricey game,
right.
A lot of people would balk at paying that much for a solo game, but it's great to see the quality.
I'm not saying that it needs to be as much as the multiplayer, but I mean,
more would be nice.
There are times when I just want to play a game by myself, like I'm just unwinding, and that's why I play video games almost.
But I just want to harp on I don't know. The components of this game and the artwork, everything that went into it is so gorgeous. You really feel how hard they worked on the game, I think. I think it's awesome, and hats off to them. Another thing we didn't use, because I don't think it was actually ready yet when we played, is there is an app which has the book on there as well as some other stuff. So that's always, and I think even some I think it has a mode where when you're exploring, it will actually have a microphone on, and you actually can't make too much noise. You'll be penalized. Yeah, so that's fun.
Oh God, I just imagine us being like, all right, we need. Then
Somebody sneezes.
That even becomes worse when you're playing with more people. If you don't, your group, because two of us would actually get into it, and be like, all right. And then meanwhile, Matt, hey guys, what you doing?
Yeah, that could be a disaster. So this War of Mine, definitely recommend. Super.
Right, especially if you wanted something that's more of a solo experience.
Solo game and very thematic.
I don't think there's anything else we can recommend over it, really, solo-wise. It really does.
As far as, again, I think Robinson Crusoe is the closest thing I can think of that offers a solo and is that in-depth feeling. But certainly that game was more so designed for co-op, whereas this really feels like a solo game. So lots of good stuff this week. Tons of it. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you've played this War of Mine or Terraforming Mars, or if you're looking forward to any of the games we talked about, like Legend of Korra.
And like we said, if you're going to Gen Con,
yes.
Why you're going to Gen Con if it's your first. Is it because that you're like, oh, I got to make it because of the anniversary? Is it that you finally decided it's your time to get into the board gaming community?
Let us know. You can leave a comment right here on YouTube. We'll read it on the air next week, or you could email us at rollforcrit@gmail.com.
And of course, we're in so many other places. We're on Instagram at rollforcrit for both Instagram and Twitter.
Yep.
Facebook. We are also hiding in the basement right now.
And of course, you should like and subscribe to this channel. We'd appreciate it if you did. Check out our website, rollforcrit.com, where there's some games for sale, plus more videos just like this one. It's a really good place to go.
Yes, but until then, I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and this has been Roll for Crit.